Welcome to Rico 12. I'm Justin, your host, and a beautifully imperfect, stumbling, bumbling child of an absolutely powerful and perfectly loving God and an addict. Rico 12 is all about exploring the common threads of addiction and sharing tools and hope from those on a similar path. We gather from diverse backgrounds, faiths, and places to learn and support one another. Our speakers represent various fellowships, addictions, and afflictions, thus showing the common threads of recovery no matter our addiction or affliction. Today's speakers for the 244th meeting are Nick B and Carrington S, who are both first-time Rico 12 speakers. We're excited to have them here. I enjoy having these talks with couples who are walking through recovery together and sharing their experience, strength, and hope together. I look forward to hearing their message on stepping into action here in a few minutes, but first for a little bit of business. Rico 12 has several recovery resources in our family of podcasts and social media communities. To learn more, listen more, connect more, or just hang out and learn and grow with us, you can check out the other podcasts, Noodle It Out with Nikki M, which releases every Tuesday, the Big Book Roundtable, which releases every Thursday. And to learn more about each of these podcasts, check out the chat and the show notes in the podcast here or in the meeting that I'll put in the chat, or go to rico12.com. And you can join in our WhatsApp group and other communities we have. I'll post those in the link and in the show notes. We are now scheduling speakers into June. So if you are someone or know someone with a message to share, please reach out to me at rico12pod@gmail.com. That's RECO12POD@gmail.com, and we will get that ball rolling. Rico 12 is self-supporting, and your contributions help us continue our mission. Thanks this week to Barbara and all who have been contributors to Rico 12 and for being spearheads and supporting this cause. There are real costs to run these services. Web hosting and podcast hosting are the major ones. If you feel moved upon to donate, it's much appreciated. If not, don't worry about it. Kick back, relax, and listen. To support Rico 12 and become a spearhead, you can go to rico12.com/support, or I'll put some links in the chat in the show notes, and you can follow those. Your support does make a difference in keeping us able to share this message of hope and recovery to everyone out there. We look forward each meeting to receiving from the light reflected from our speakers. That light inspires hope, meaning, worth, and growth in us, the listening audience. Now I'm going to introduce our guest speakers for today, Nick and Carrington, and give a little background on them. Nick B is a recovering sexaholic, a codependent, a compulsive binge eater, and a grateful member of the SAL Fellowship. With the grace of God, a change of heart, and rigorous honesty, Nick has 2.5 years of sobriety from sexual addiction. His first spiritual awakening was when he became aware of his own ignorance after living a life of self-will run riot. Nick now strives to live a life of quality, with feeling his emotions, making decisions based on integrity, and continuing to practice his conscious contact with God. Keeping idle isn't an option. Constantly taking action is the pathway to his peace. Now here's a little bit about Carrington. Carrington S. is a proud and grateful member of Alcoholics Anonymous. Her sobriety date is November 18th of 2013. Carrington lives her life by the great words of Britney Spears, "You better work." Leaning into the unknown and trusting in the care of her higher power has been the key component of Carrington's recovery. Quote, "Hope is praying for rain. Faith is bringing an umbrella." Carrington knows that taking action has been the key ingredient to sustainable transformation, and that faith without works is dead. Take it away, Nick and Carrington. The floor is yours. Go ahead and come off mute, Nick. Oh, shoot. Hang on just a second. Let me fix this. That is my bad. I didn't set you guys up as co-hosts. Okay. Now we can move forward smoothly. You can unmute yourself. Awesome. Thanks, Nick.
Thanks, Justin. Hi, I'm Nikki B. Nick B. I just want to say thank you, Justin. I've known Justin since the first day I came into the SL Fellowship. Justin, I love you so much. You do amazing work. I'm so grateful for you. Seriously, I'm so grateful for you. Hi, my sobriety date is October 4th of 2021 from sexual addiction. I am a compulsive binge eater. Also, my character defects are dishonesty, aggressiveness, reactive, egotistical, closed-minded, selfish, self-pity. I live in gluttony, always the victim. Some of the fruits of my addiction were adultery, paying for sex in massage parlors, sex clubs, street lust, stalking, sexting, stealing, bullying, aggressive, all of it. The things I've learned since I've joined is being honest, empathetic, compassionate, loyal, curious, optimistic, become a better listener. I'm reliable. These are things that I had to learn. I thought I was these things, but I definitely wasn't. So I just want to share a passage real quick out of the big book that really defines me during my addiction. It's on page 21. He is a real Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. He is seldom mildly intoxicated. He is always more or less insanely drunk with lust. His disposition while drinking resembles his normal nature, but little. He may be one of the finest fellows in the world, yet let him drink for a day, and he frequently becomes disgustingly and even dangerously antisocial. He has a positive genius for getting tight at exactly the wrong moment, particularly when important decisions must be made or engagements kept. And a little bit further down, it says, he often possesses special abilities, skills, and aptitudes, and has a promising career ahead of him. He uses his gifts to build up a bright outlook for his family and himself, and then pulls the structure down on his head by senseless series of sprees. That was my entire life, 45 years. And I really ruined my life. Alcohol was not my drug of choice. Women, validation. I needed it all the time. From anybody I got a hold of. Anybody, any kind of person I saw. I was living 6 different lives. Mind you, I was married for 20 years, 2 kids, and I completely destroyed that relationship. And since that recovery, since that getting into program and really working, really taking action into this program, I have a wonderful relationship with my kids, my ex-wife that I abused for 20 years, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. We have a great relationship now, supportive, dialogue is open. That's a miracle. That is God in my life. Without a doubt, that is God in my life. My first spiritual awakening when I stopped being ignorant to my ignorance. I couldn't believe that I was the cause of all these things in my life. It really affected everything I did. From losing jobs to losing meaningful relationships to causing misery for other people's relationships, right? Because I was living 6 different lives. I had 6 different relationships. I had Nick at work, Nick at my family, right? And then I had Nick at the gym in one place and then Nick at the gym in another place. Being physically fit became a way for me to connect with other women and anybody that paid attention to me. That's really what it was. Anybody that could give me validation, I went towards. And I ruined everything. I was homeless at a point. I was considering committing suicide because I was far from I was 3,000 miles away from a nuclear family that I grew up with in New York, living out here in California. My ex-wife, kids left me. I couldn't hold relationships. I couldn't friendships. I was completely secluded by myself. And the only thing that worked and then eventually stopped working was lust and women. I was literally acting out with porn 7, 8, 9 times a day because any feeling I had, that was the only way I could cope. So getting into a program, especially SAL, was a godsend to me. I had no idea about SAL. My therapist said, "Hey, maybe you're a sex addict." And then I went on and looked, for sex and love addiction, and SAL came up, and thank God it did. The fellowship that I found during COVID time, it was exactly what I needed from these guys. That fellowship is still such an important part of my recovery. I had a accountability person and sponsor that taught me a very important lesson, and that was to just slow down in anything I would do. Speaking to friends, program, getting inside my head. I was going 1,000 miles a minute in my head, and whenever I was able to slow down, that allowed God to come in. And God is, I put a lot of blame onto God because my impression of what God is to me had to change. A little backstory. I come from a very heavily religious family. I'm Greek Orthodox. My father is a Greek Orthodox priest. I was in the church my entire life. And if there's moments when I felt good, but the relationship I had with my higher power now doesn't compare to what I had then at all. And it has taught me what love really is. And love really is a verb. Like I really need to take action with that. And some of the things that I have to learn was patience and kindness. And love is being truthful, and that it protects, and that love trusts and hopes and it perseveres. And those things take a lot of work for me, a lot of work. It's still a lot of work for me to do because I'm a forgetaholic. I forget everything I'm taught because my self-will wants to come back every single time. And has it gotten easier? Has it gotten easier to laugh at myself now when those character defects show up? Yes. I look at those as opportunities that God is giving me to change. I got a quick story, and then I'll let Carrington introduce herself. I love the gym. My morning routine really is to pray and then get to the gym. I love physical fitness in the morning. I love getting my blood flow up. It's an action step for me. And it's the same group of people, at 4:30 in the morning. And then there was somebody that was new there. And for whatever reason, I had to not look. And I stepped away. I made a call. I left a message because they didn't pick up. And basically, whenever I tell anybody that calls me, it's just, if I don't pick up, leave a message like you're speaking to God. Surrender, still surrender. And that's what I did. And it's so funny. As soon as I hung up the phone, that person came right next to me to use a cable machine. And I laughed at it. I was like, okay, God, I see you. I see you. I see what you're trying to do. It's an opportunity for me to grow. And I picked up my stuff and went across the gym. And that was the end of that. The obsession wasn't there. I saw it differently. My perspective changed. That's the miracle. That's a miracle to me. Yeah, I wanted to share that story. I'm just going to let Carrington speak a little bit, and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. I am Carrington, and I'm a grateful member of AA. Like Justin shared, my sobriety date is November 18th, 2013. Justin, I just want to say thank you so much for having us here. Never in a million years would I have thought that I would be on a meeting with my partner. My track record with relationships is not to be desired, I suppose. So this is a real miracle, and it's a miracle because of this program. The only relationships that I was really able to sustain in my addiction were relationships with animals because they wouldn't leave me. But yeah, a little bit about what it was like. Some words to describe would be empty, vapid, lonely, dishonest, self-seeking. And I was just paralyzed. I was the addict and alcoholic who would sit and write lists, and dream, but there was no action taken behind all of that. I was just so complacent, and I wanted, all these opportunities to come knocking on my door, and they didn't, because I was just so sick in my disease. I love the expression, what is it? I'm not a bad person, getting well. I'm a good person who's sick. I totally just butchered that expression. But basically, like AA, the 12 steps, they are my medicine. I need this program to live life on life's terms. Without it, I would be sort of out floating around in the ocean, I love the story in the big book about being feeling like you're in quicksand. How that's really what it felt like. Like alcohol was my master, and I was just sinking deeper and deeper into my disease. And it is progressive. I am here to tell you, it is very progressive. I had 8 years sober, and I relapsed in 2013. And my disease just picked up right where it left off. It was doing push-ups in the corner, waiting for me to have any sort of chink in my armor. And it came back with vengeance. And I came back into the rooms with my tail between my legs, and I just fell to my knees because I think in the back of my head, they say in the big book, every form of self-deception and experimentation, I tried to prove I was an exception to the rule. I could drink like a lady, I could keep it together. I hadn't lost everything. And in about 3 months, I had, destroyed my life. And walking into those rooms, that was when God reached his hand out and pulled me out of that quicksand. I was just so lost. I was so lost, and I was so riddled with fear and self-doubt. And I was so self-seeking, and selfish, just so selfish, everything revolved around me. And the beauty for me of this program and so much about our romantic relationship is being in action, and sometimes it's doing nothing. But for the most part, it is taking those action steps to get well. And for me, contrary action, opposite action has been the antidote to really probably every problem in this program. When I don't want to do something, that is my disease saying, you probably should do it, Carrington, and I always have my sponsor in the back of my head. Like, of course, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be sharing. I want to go do what I want to do. And I just have my sponsor in the back of my head saying, Carrington, this isn't about you. This is about being of service to the newcomer. So that was a real hard one for me to grasp. But here I am taking contrary action. So the beauty is I hear those whispers from my higher power that are gentle, that are loving, that are kind, that say, maybe going to that meeting and sharing is a really good idea, right? Maybe picking up the phone and calling another fellow in the program and getting out of yourself is, a really good idea. I remember when I first got sober, a little story, my sponsor. So I was in a halfway house, and one of the requirements, you had to wake up at 6:30, you had a meeting to go to. And, then we would carry on with our day. And I remember one of the requirements, right, was, and I was a good girl, right? I wanted to check all the boxes off to make sure that I was doing it, quote unquote, right. She said, so I got a sponsor, and she said, Carrington, I want you to wake up in the morning. I want you to make your bed, and I want you to call me right away. No big deal. I got this. I'm going to wake up. I'm going to make my bed. Sure. I did that. And then I didn't call her. And it was just one of those things that just rattled around in my head all day long. And I was like, how am I going to get out of this? You know what I mean? How can I manipulate this situation? So I finally called her at 3 p.m. and I will never forget her saying, and I'm trying to, appease her and manipulate. And she's like, Carrington, why don't you pray for a little bit of willingness? And she hung up on me. And and that was one of those moments for me in early recovery. It was like, wow, I am in my own way. Talk about self-will run riot. That moment of, I need to take direction. And my higher power is working through this woman. And the next morning I woke up and made my bed, and I called her right away. And it was one of those moments of, that was a pivotal piece for me. Because that same flavor will show up for me throughout my recovery, is that the I don't wanna. The taking action piece shows up in so many ways. And, one of them is getting a sponsor, working the steps, right? doing a thorough inventory. My gosh, like, was that painful? And then sharing the inventory. And then I get to go out in the world and practice, not being selfish and self-centered. And nothing like a relationship to highlight all of your character's defects, but also what a great opportunity for exploration, opportunity to grow, right? To grow, to learn, to lean into the pain, the places that are wounded and hurt and that need to be healed. We recently started Recovering Couples Anonymous. And so that's a whole other layer that we're excited about. Do you want to talk?
Yeah.
Go. Yeah, you go ahead.
Of course I want to talk.
Of course he wants to talk. Let him talk.
Action. So that was, I feel like we gave a little bit of our beginning action steps. But what really matters is how I want to live my life. Right? My sobriety is important to me, but my emotional sobriety is so much more important, because that's what dictates my relationships. And relationships to me is what I need, is what I destroyed, is what I needed before, but I was looking at it in all the wrong ways. And now my relationships are so meaningful. The ones that I have, they're so deep and wonderful. And, one of those things for me now is to get uncomfortable. The more uncomfortable I get, and realize my faults and really try to process my feelings and my thoughts, has paid wonderful dividends for me. For instance, like Carrington and I, we do couples therapy twice a month. I love it. I get so uncomfortable, and there's times when Carrington has gotten vulgar, during it. Like, she wants to just say, it's like how she feels. She just wants to say, F you, dude. And I was like, and my first thing is, F this. I'm just, get the hell out of here. Like, I don't want to take that, right? But the more I sit there, right, and I process through it, and I'm actively hearing and listening what she has and going on, it all goes back to the same thing of, like, don't matter, those childhood things that I was taught when I was a kid, like, not on purpose. My parents didn't know any different, but like the abandonment issues. I don't matter. I'm not enough. I felt like I was 10-year-old Nick kicking and screaming up until I joined this program at 45. I was still that 10-year-old kid. And, I got a picture of me as a Boy Scout in front of something with this pissed off look that my dad wanted to take of me. And that really defines my 45 years of life, is that one picture of my face, but how I was always irritated and pissed off. And now I get uncomfortable, and just because I'm feeling things and then I'm angry, and really anger is just the top of the iceberg. It's really all the other things underneath it that really matters, like to really process it. And what happens is that I'm not living in fear or anger. I'm not living in that fear or anger. I'm living in the solution. And that's hard to do sometimes, especially, in a relationship, because I want it to work. Like, now I believe that there's no such thing as, for me, there's no such thing as true love, right? There's a thing of I'm making commitment because I want to work this out. Hey, Rosie, enough, please. Thank you. That's our dog, Rosie. She's amazing, and we love her so much. Now I search to be uncomfortable, and I realize that just because I'm feeling something of anger or self-doubt, that I don't have to act on it. That's not what's defining me. What's defining me is my actions and how I want to show up in every relationship, from work to my children, to Carrington, to friends, to my fellows at SAL and any other program I'm in, is with patience, kindness, truthfulness, trusting, hope, perseverance. And what takes away from those fruits of love, right, is anger, rudeness, envy, not being able to forgive, being selfish, delighting in evil, boastfulness. Those things take away the fruit that I've worked so hard to gain. right? Love is an action. Love is a verb, right? Like the fruits that I enjoy from it is what I get from that work, right? So I have to work to get those fruits that I've been wanting so badly in my life. You know, the fact that I feel so secure in just being my authentic self with Carrington and being able to have a safe place to express that is amazing, you know? And there's times when we have to shelf it, you know, like she's saying something and I'm ready to fight for this, right? Or whatever it is, I'm ready to fight for it. And she sees that in me, right? And it's great to have a partner that's in recovery as well, or just, I don't want to say in recovery. It's great to have a partner that's in, she's able to self-evaluate herself at that time, that she's able to say, hey, why don't we shelf it, right? And my instinct is, no, I don't want to shelf it. I want to talk about it right now, right? And she goes, oh, let's shelf it. And I have to remember, it's like, okay, let's shelf it. It's going to come up again, right? It's going to come up again. And as soon as that happens, there's an ease that comes, you know, and it's great to have that supporting cast member in our life. You know, you like that? Cast member.
Cast member.
Yeah, I like that. Because I'm not the lead and neither is she. We're in this together. And, you know, something else that I love, you know, at the beginning part of our relationship, you know, we didn't meet in the rooms, you know, we met out in public and just say hi to each other. And it just, you know, just like she was in program, I was in program. And then something came up with my past. You know, so something came up and I had to tell her about it. And my first fear is like, oh shit, she's going to want to know details. And her first reaction, which is so incredible to me, it's like, let me know how I can support you. I don't need to know the details. I'll stay on my side of the street. That, like the safety in that is just amazing. It's just amazing. Like, you know, she wants to support me and she's going to let me trudge along that path that I created for myself in my past and I'm still fixing. And she just let me know how I can support you. And that showed me that I could, that was just another deposit of trust in her emotional bank account. Right? I was able to get some more feel trust from her and safe. And that allowed me to open up with other things. And, you know, and I just want to go back to what I said before with love. Like love is not, for me, there isn't true love. There's a way that I want to work my committed relationship with Carrington. The fact that I want to work the action, the steps is what makes this wonderful. And also with, you know, the relationship that I have with my ex-wife, I had to make it safe for her as well, for her to be able to communicate with me and be trusting and for us to be great parents together for our kids. Even though it's not the way we planned on it when we first got married, right? This is the right way, though, the way we're doing it, because I'm in my recovery. I would not have become the person I am without falling to my face. Like, I'm so grateful I'm not ignorant to that crap anymore, right? Do they still come up? Of course they do. But now I have the tools to slow down. The first thing I ask is, God, please help me be the father you need me to be today. Please help me be the partner you need me to be today. Please help me be the worker you need me to be today. That 2-second prayer allows me to pause, let God into my life, and change my thought for that split second. And my life has gotten better because of that. I think that's, yeah. What do you think about that?
I think that's great. I think that's amazing. Yeah, you know, what do I have to share? You know, I think what was coming to mind was this sort of idea of a toolbox, right? And I was talking to one of my sponsors, my previous sponsor, yesterday about getting into action, and we were talking about the toolbox, right? Like before I came into recovery, the only thing in my toolbox was probably like a cobweb and like a bottle of alcohol, you know? And actually, I don't even know if I had a toolbox, but now my toolbox is just so rich with tools, right? And I remember my sponsor saying, well, the nail isn't going to hammer itself. You know, it's like you have to pick up these tools in order for them to work. And so like, and I think I have a belt, like more of a tool belt situation. I think that's a little bit cuter. So I'm so grateful I have this fellowship of women in my life. My women's group is my ride or die. I am so grateful for the community that I've created.
It's absolutely beautiful to watch that, by the way. She has an incredible support system, and that's so valuable, which made me, I'm sorry for interrupting, which made me go out and create the fellowship that I wanted and finding an in-person men's group that I am completely in love with.
Yeah. I like the expression in the big book, we're not a glum lot. And I think there was always this conception that, oh my gosh, who am I going to be? What am I going to do if I'm not out there in the world destroying everything or quote unquote having fun? Okay. And we have so much fun in our recovery together. We play and we make sure that that is an integral part of our recovery. We have done things like skydiving together. We have done things like roller skating,
but like
salsa dancing,
like rhinestone cowboy roller skating. Like we had to get dressed up for it, right? I just had a birthday party and the theme was wear anything pink. Like this is not who I am, right? I had to step outside it, but the stuff with that just, I'm sorry for interrupting you again, but being a kid, being playtime and getting back, because I felt like, being a kid, like I have great thoughts about when I was a kid. I try to get back to that happiness, that joy when I was a kid, and then I just lost it. And the fact that I strive to get back to that, and actually I'm doing it now. I'm actually taking action steps to actually get out of my comfort zone, and go that and be playful. Opens me up again to God to come back into my life.
Yeah, when I'm not taking myself seriously, that's when I get to be my best self, and God is present. And
like this podcast, like we were thinking about, like, let's scare the crap out of us, both of us, to do this podcast. And we're thinking, how are we going to show up for this? And like, we took so many notes and we practiced. And then the day came, like, everything out the window. We're just going to try, we're just going to do it.
God will show up.
God's going to show up.
God's going to show up.
We both have a trusting, and our higher power is different, and that's okay. That's something else I realized. Not everybody has to have my higher power.
Yeah, it's your own conception.
It's your own conception. Yeah, I think that's what we got, Justin.
Beautiful. And God did show up. Thank you both for your shares. This is good stuff. There have been a couple of questions come in. I've written down a whole bunch of questions. A reminder to our live audience, if you have questions for Nick or Carrington or both, please type them in the chat. We'll get to those. If you want those to remain anonymous, if you don't want me to mention your first name, just either send it direct message to me or type anonymous at the beginning and we'll get there. The first place I want to go, I'm actually going to bring, I love the playfulness here. The first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to bring another guest in who's not actually here, my wife. Nick, you mentioned that you had to share something with Carrington that you were like, man, this is not going to be good. And she said, you know what? I'm going to stay on my side of the street. Recently, I had a very similar thing with my own wife. And I went to her and I talked to her and she said, thank you for sharing that with me. I'm not your sponsor. I'm not your higher power. Go take care of it and then come back to me. And that is one of the amazing things about having a partner who is working recovery, who has that toolbox, who has those things in place that just is able to set that and say, you know what? Thanks for sharing, but not my business. You take care of it otherwise. And that was so helpful to me. Do you have any other further thoughts on that, either one of you?
Yeah. The last 3 to 4 months for me have been a miraculous change in my recovery. And that's because I went into service, right? I started being a moderator in one of my groups. I started doing speaker meetings. I started sponsoring. Like me, I'm a sponsor now. I'm an effing sponsor. That is just insane to me. That's a miracle. And what I'm realizing from what I'm hearing a lot is, people are trying to recover their relationships with their partner that they abused, and that's a really hard spot. That's a really, really hard spot. Because the betrayed partner a lot of the times feels like they don't have to do the work. They feel like, I didn't do this, they did this, right? And that's really hard, right? Because for an addict like myself, that I realize what I have done. I've taken accountability for what I have done, right? For a partner then to just like try to control your recovery, try to control the program you're doing, trying to know exactly what you're sharing and all these kind of things. That's not a safe place for anybody, right? So For people out there struggling in their relationships because they've been betrayed, and the betrayed partner feels like they don't need recovery work or they don't need qualified therapy and all that. I strongly suggest that you just take a pause for a moment and just self-evaluate a little bit and just try to get into some sort of recovery, because one of the boundaries or one of the non-negotiables I had trying to find a partner was I wanted someone that's in recovery. I wanted an addict just like me. I want someone to speak the language the way I speak it. I feel that I make our relationship a safe place for Carrington to express herself also, because in the end, what we all need is just to be heard. Like, I just want to be heard. I don't need Dr. Ross fixing my problems. I just want to be heard. Carrington doesn't want me to fixing her problems. She can do that on her own with her own fellowship. She just wants to be heard. And especially my ex-wife who I betrayed. There's times when she, opens up and expresses what's going on in her life. And old Nick would just try to, you got to do this, you got to do that. And what's happened is like, I'm just there to listen, and that's so hard to do. And for a betrayed partner not being in some sort of recovery is really, is difficult. It just brings, I feel like it brings strife to the relationship. And it's really hard to get past that, even if the addicted partner is what, caused everything. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What do you feel about that?
Yeah, no, thank you so much for that question. I think, I think ultimately my sort of goal on a daily basis is to have optimal serenity, and by staying on my side of the street allows for that freedom, and I have a disease that is one of distorted thinking. And my thoughts get me in trouble, So for me, it's like, I need to keep things really clean and really clear. And sometimes I don't need to know. I don't need to know. And that's between, like you said, between you and your higher power. That's between you and your sponsor and your fellows in this program. But, I just want to circle back to the expression of that I butchered at the beginning was, I'm not a bad person. I'm a sick person, So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question. I think that builds a little bit on what you were sharing, but in order for me to be well, I need to be spiritually fit. And that means staying on my side of the street, because my street's super pretty.
Love it. My street is so cute.
Thank you.
Love it. Oh, that's great. All right. Hey, so Carrington, I have a question for you. You mentioned, hey, after 8 years, you relapsed.
Sure. Yeah.
What's the difference between your sobriety during those first 8 years and what it looks like today since then?
Thank you for asking that question. Yeah. I was 24 when I first got sober. And if I'm looking back, I think I was doing it for everyone else, right? Like, I did all of the things. I got my undergrad, went to graduate school, got my career, all the things. And, I stopped working a program. I stopped working the program. It was sort of like, I got this, I was working in recovery. So that's sort of like, in my mind, substituted for the program, which it doesn't. But, the second time around, when I came back in after relapsing, it was a completely different ballgame, because I was doing it for me, I had something to prove the first time around. The second time around I was completely and fully surrendered. That I have a disease that tells me I don't have a disease, and it's out to kill me. And that, and really to witness and be part of that progression so quickly in 3 months, scared me to death. So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that,
Yeah.
Carrington.
Yeah.
All right, next question comes in from our audience. This is from an anonymous person. This question is for Nick. I'm also Greek Orthodox. Did you struggle with reconciling your relationship with your understanding of God in your Greek Orthodox faith versus the God you found in recovery?
That's an awesome question, and I love that it's answered. So when I was a kid, I would suppose this is kind of typical for most kids. Like when you're a kid, your interpretation of God is whoever your caretaker is and who's taking care of you. And that was mostly my mother. My mother lived a very traumatic life with how she grew up back in Greece and stuff. And, she had a ceiling of how far she could go with the things that she's learned and all that. And that was just, put on to me. So, my interpretation of God when I was growing up Greek in the Greek household, felt like, because I've spoken to my parents since then, this is not how they intended it to be, but how it felt like to me, it was very performance based. Like I did good in school, or I did good, whatever it is, I deserve love. But I was a troublemaker. I was always seeking. I was also a middle child. I was also always seeking not only validation, but acceptance. I was also always seeking attention, and I usually got that, being a bad kid or being rambunctious. It's people laugh at it. And when I say people laugh at it, my family laughs at it when I was a kid. But like I would come into a room or go to my uncle's house, whatever it is, and someone would say, "Oh, Nikita's here. Watch out. Something's going to happen." And it's like I was already doing something bad before I even got into the room. So the way I changed that was I had to unlearn that stuff. I had to unlearn it. I had to physically, get rid of the God I thought. My higher power, I call him Christ. Okay. So it's like I had to get rid of that image of what Christ was for me growing up and what I wanted him to be for me now. And what I want him to be for me now is sometimes I want him to be a friend. Sometimes I want him to be a caretaker. Sometimes I want him to be really strict and truthful to me and put me through some pain to learn. Right. But what I've done, the best action I've done was to make space for God to be in my life, because I never created space for him when I was in my addiction. I was my own God. Like I was my own God. Even like when I talk about that, like I constantly needed validation from other people to make me feel like I'm a God. I wanted people to worship me. I wanted people to lust and to be lusted after. I wanted that so badly. And what happened was once I became sober, because sober is not it. Sobriety, it's great to have sobriety. I needed sobriety to get into recovery. But that allowed God to get in. I made room. So when I wasn't homeless anymore and I finally was able to get a place, and I lived by the beach, which was miraculous. I bought 2 Adirondack chairs and I put them on the beach. And those 2 chairs was for me to be out there in the mornings and at night. It was one for me and one for my God. I made space for it. I didn't buy a couch. I bought two single chairs. I didn't have money to buy a table to eat, so I had 2 TV trays. So when I made dinner for myself, it was dinner for myself, and I always put a tray there, just to have God next to me. I always made room for him. The symbolism of that meant so much to me. And I just had to unlearn the stuff I learned. I hope that explained it,
Yeah, that is beautiful. Carrington, do you have any similar or different story like that for you in your relationship with your higher power?
No, very different. I grew up in New England. I grew up next to a land conservancy. We had many acres, and I've always felt very connected to nature. I grew up riding the hunter jumper circuit with my horses, and I was always very connected to animals. And my point being is that is where I found my higher power, was in those relationships with nature. And my horses, through events that transpired, I severed the relationship with horses. And that's when I fell deeply into my disease. And I don't think that there's any sort of mistake there. So for me to sort of understand and grasp the sort of concept of a higher power, it was very easy for me, because I've always felt that. And the reconnection for me with the natural world has been so transformative. And that has been an integral part of my story, is being with my animals.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Carrington. Love the difference and the similarities there. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Another question from an anonymous attendee here. And this is a couple of statements followed by a question. So here we go. You guys give me a whole bunch of inspiration for recovery in my relationship. We are both addicts. I work a program. He doesn't. My Al-Anon program teaches me to be happy, joyous, and free, despite the fact that my partner is in active addiction. And to meet him where he's at. My SLAA program teaches me that I don't have to settle for less in any relationship, no matter what I am feeling. I have tools to work through it, and that both people need to show up to make a healthy relationship work. So this is a very thin line for me, and sometimes I don't know on which side of the line I stand. Any advice on how to make, build, and keep healthy boundaries in my relationship to protect myself and my family while still staying in and maintaining our relationship? It's pretty heavy. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, will you repeat the last part of that question?
Yeah. So the last bit was, do you have any advice on how to make, build, and keep healthy boundaries in my relationship to protect myself and my family while still staying in and maintaining our relationship?
Such a great question. So many layers to that question. Yeah, boundaries. Boundaries keep us safe. Boundaries create respect. And the good news here is that you get to choose. I think the most important relationship that you have is your relationship with your higher power, and cultivating that and finding refuge and peace within that. Having somebody in active addiction is this disease is cunning, baffling, and powerful, and it is insidious, right? Like it just destroys relationships. And what do you have to share about this?
Boundaries are meant for safety. And when I first started, I thought boundaries were meant to just keep me away. So I don't know how to answer this question. That's because I haven't really experienced that. I was the addict not wanting to be in recovery. Like at the beginning, I was the one not wanting to do that. Right. I just know that in my experience, safety, making the relationship safe for everybody to express themselves is, and not to judge or criticize, which is so hard to do. It matters. I could tell you that when I was in my addiction and my ex-wife found out, her boundary was I'm not going to be able to talk and be unsafe like that for her or the kids. She moved out, took my kids with her, did all that. I was on my own. It's like that was a boundary. I kept on crossing it, and she acted, and it put me in pain. Like the only time I ever learned was to be in detrimental pain, crippling pain. Like I had to be in pain to learn, because if not, I'm okay. I could persevere in such horrible conditions. But that's not who I want to be anymore. I don't want to be in that pain. It's just what, so it's like, if your partner is in active addiction and completely not willing to self-evaluate at all or become humble enough so he can become teachable, first, I'm really sorry. That's really difficult and hard. I don't know, it's, you got to protect yourself. It's really difficult.
Yeah, it is a tough question. There are a couple of chapters that I can think of in the big book. There's the one, to wives, and that can be addressed to me, to anybody, it's not just to wives. And then to employers, that I think both of those chapters hit on these types of situations. And maybe boundaries need to be drawn that happen in there. besides that, I don't have any additional advice or experience, strength, or hope to share beyond what you, Carrington, and Nick shared with that. So
there is something that came up to my mind is like, about, I read this book called The Right Fight, How to Live a Loving Life. And that, I was able to take out of that about, you could still love a person and still have boundaries, right? You could love your partner so much that you have to set this boundary. Like they are destroying themselves. And, I'm going to love you the way Carrington showed up for me when I had that problem, in my past. And she's like, I'm going to love you and support you how it is, but I'm going to stand over here and you're going to do what you need to do. And I could have taken that different ways. I could have fell back into my addiction. I could have done so many different things, right? But I had, it's like, you might have to step back and love them from afar. That's what, I was reading. It's like, you can still love a person and still support them, but you don't have to be in their addiction.
Yeah. What was the name of that book again, Nick?
The Right Fight, How to Live a Loving Life. It's by John Kennedy Bond. I loved it. It's so good. Such a good book.
All right. That will be in the show notes of the podcast for anybody who wants to look that up, as well as any other resources that we've discussed here. Got a couple more questions that have come in. This one's from Zach. Zach says, Carrington and Nick, thank you so much. I am a recovering perfectionist and self-critic. What tips do you have for letting go of self-criticism and not taking myself too seriously?
I love this question because I totally relate. My gosh. And I think both Nick and I, we grew up in very performative families. So, I was sort of the show pony. And, what I've learned is perfectionism is the thief of joy. And it just, it for me, it's such an avoidant behavior. And because I want things to look a certain way and I want to be in control, and that is my will. That is my will, so when I am able to hand it over, and I honestly have to say that sometimes repetitively throughout the day, just hand it over, like literally undo this motion, whatever it might be that we're like trying to gnaw on and figure out and make it look a certain way. It's like perfectionism doesn't exist. And it's like, and I think what I've realized is that, I used to think that everyone is thinking about me. And I come to find that no, nobody's thinking about you and nobody really cares. So, it's that, I'm an egomaniac with an inferiority complex, and it's like, I'm not that important.
I also want to share about that. Zach, great question. I love you, Zach. We've had plenty of conversations. What I love about that question is that when I become a perfectionist, or when I am a perfectionist, what that creates in my life is delay, doubt, delusion, the way I'm thinking, all these D's, right? Doubt, delay, and delusion. And then I don't do it. Or I just keep waiting to do something. And I just keep waiting and it never freaking happens. And it's like, oh, we remember that time I should have done this. The shouldas, couldas, it's like perfectionism just makes me delay in everything and doubt myself. And so here I am on a Rico 12 podcast that I've been wanting to do for a while.
Being imperfect.
Yeah, being completely imperfect with the message, right? But
imperfectly perfect.
Yeah, it's perfectionism is the thief of joy.
There's a theme here in my own life, and I'm just going to share this. I'm going to interject myself into this for just a minute. Sorry about this. A couple days ago, I was talking with my sponsor, and I actually was interviewed on a different podcast. And the last question was, what do you want your higher power to say to you when you meet that higher power at the proverbial pearly gates? And as I thought about it for a second, the thought came, thank you for being imperfect in sharing my love with others. And as I shared that with my sponsor, he goes, oh, this imperfection, that's a beautiful thing. And I'm embracing it more and more, this fact. In fact, I opened this meeting with a little bit different phrase than I typically use. I'm a beautifully imperfect, stumbling, bumbling child of God.
We love that you said that, because we call ourselves, we're just bozos on the bus.
Yeah.
Trying to go through life. We're just bozos on the bus.
Yeah. This embracing imperfection is something that's changing my life. Any other final words of wisdom from either of you or both of you before we close this out, Nick and Carrington?
Yeah, just sort of building on that, that we are fallible, and that's what makes us beautiful, and yeah, I'm so grateful to be here. So thank you.
Yeah, I've been thinking about what I wanted to do, because I know you do a last quote of wisdom, and I just want to say, whatever I say now, whatever I try to say it with love. There's a choice that I have. I can either show up in fear, which fear can be so many things: doubt, selfishness, ego. It can be so many, or it can show up with love. And if anything could come out of this, is like we have a choice. We can either be in fear or love. And I choose love. I choose love, even in the uncomfortableness. Even when we're in therapy and she's bringing up something, and I just want to throw the book across the room and walk out the door and be like, F this, it's too hard. No, I'm going to sit there and take it and listen and grow. So I want to respond in love.
Beautiful. And thank you for sharing that. I can either respond in fear or love. And I'm going to jump ahead in my reading just a little bit to bridge onto this. Next week's speaker will be Bill S. His topic will be Thou Shalt Not Fear. And I really look forward to this. I'm grateful to have these speakers coming in. Grateful to you, Nick and Carrington, to get to connect with you, Nick, as we do often, to be able to get to meet you, Carrington. You and Nick
you're doing great work, Justin. You're doing great work. I love you so much, man.
Love you guys. All right. So thank you so much for a fantastic RICO 12 speaker meeting. If we missed your questions or you have more questions, please consider joining the WhatsApp community. You can email me at rico12pod@gmail.com. I'll get you in there to join the conversation. If you haven't already done so, please rate and review the podcast on Apple Podcasts. It really does help get the message out to more and more people. And make sure to check out all the other things that we do at RICO 12. Let's see. Once again, Bill S. will be speaking next week. His topic will be Thou Shalt Not Fear. And I think it'll be a good, powerful follow-up to what Nick just closed us out with here. Now, let's launch off into the rest of our day with the 11th step prayer. Carrington, you ready to say that for us?
I am. Yes.
Awesome.
Carrington, alcoholic. Lord, make me a channel of thy peace, that where there is hatred, I may bring love, that where there is wrong, I may bring the spirit of forgiveness, that where there is discord, I may bring harmony, that where there is error, I may bring truth, that where there is doubt, I may bring faith, that where there is despair, I may bring hope, that where there are shadows, I may bring light, that where there is sadness, I may bring joy. Lord, grant that I may seek rather to comfort than to be comforted, to understand than to be understood, to love than to be loved. For it is by self-forgetting that one finds. It is by forgiving that one is forgiven. It is by dying that one awakens to eternal life. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. Remember, everybody, there's one who has all power. That one is God. However you may see God. May you find God now. Keep coming back. And when you do, come all the way in, sit all the way down. Let's trudge this road of happy destiny. Work it. You are worth it.
Work if you work it.
I've seen stars fall from above. I've fallen in and out of love. I've been high and I've been low. Now I know I just can't do this on my own. I've seen a boy become a man. He got lost without a plan. He's so far away from home. Now I know that I just can't do this on my own. Your arms surrounding me. Your touch is grounding me. No longer searching for purpose all alone. 'Cause now I know that I just can't do this on my own. I'm looking for the words to say. You make the world a better place, and I can call that place my home. 'Cause now I know that I just can't do this on my own. Your arms surrounding me, your touch is grinding me. No longer searching for purpose all alone. 'Cause now I know that I just can't do this on my own. So let me see just what you need to set you free, so we can be. I saw stars fall from above. I fell in and out of love. I got high and I fell low. But now I know that I just can't do this on my own. No, I just can't do this on my own. I just can't do this on my own.